leading, but it's not really effective because you need to have a positive result out of your leadership. And of course, yes, we did say it is for the young professional, which is you on the call. It's also should be applicable in oil and gas, but not just restricted to oil and gas. It's something that can be applied anywhere in any industry where you find yourself. But for today, whatever you pick up from me, I will say let's try to see how to apply this, because I think for me, from where I see it, from Nape perspective or Nape lens, there is a lot more we, the geoscientists, should do to be able to take up leadership positions. Sometimes, most organizations you see engineers, being the CEOs. You see some finance or HR people being CEOs or managing directors of companies. And then the question would then be, why are geoscientists, why are scientists not being able to get there? Are we so focused on technical, and not being mindful of some other elements that we need in the industry, which is around leadership? Because again, when you are leading, it doesn't mean you have to technical. Technical foundation is critical, as you hear in a second. So I just wanted to paint this picture that it's good that YP is driving this type of webinar or series, because we also need to be leaders in everywhere we find ourselves. Otherwise, some of the leaders can kick us out, even in the industry where we are the people that have the idea of finding oil and gas. So let me go through some of the slides I've got prepared. But again, what I also like, Flora and everybody on the call, is question and answers will also be very good. So I'm going to go through some of the slides, but I think I would be even much happier if, after going through some of the slides I've got, that I pick up some questions from you so that we can have an interaction. Because this is an engagement, right? It's an engagement. So let's see how we can all learn together as well. So, but I just put this picture just to stimulate our mindset in terms of what leadership is all about. It's put in 4 quadrants, right? And empower people. It's something. I mean, we talk about leadership is all about empowering people, right? It's not about you do it all. If you cannot empower people to do it, then you are not a leader. So it's about how do you empower, how do you learn and know how to empower people to deliver, and not just empower people to just for the sake of you empowering them, but they have to be empowered to deliver positive results. It's about inspiration. You have to inspire people. If you are not inspirational, you're going to be inspirational, right? So it's not just about leadership, you're going to be inspirational in leadership as well. And then if you look at the bottom, it's all about change, right? You're going to lead change. Leadership is all about change. It cannot be stagnant. If things we have to be stagnant, then we don't need leaders. We just continue to do the same thing over and over again. But we need to be able to make a transformational change, right? You need somebody to take that leadership role and responsibility. And as a leader, you should be able to lead change. And that's why most times in many big organizations, every now and then, you see like organizational restructuring, organizational changes. They will change some managers, they will change some departments and restructure it. And most times it might be a bit disruptive, but it usually most times yield positive results. So it's all about leading change. And then also, most importantly, it's about shared vision. If you don't have a vision as a leader, forget it. If you cannot set the goal for your people you're leading, forget it. Because everybody will be going in different directions. And at the end of the day, you don't reach to where you want to head to. Things will be happening, people are going to be doing things, but they're going nowhere. So I just wanted us to put this frame of 4 pillars in our mind, that this is, in my mind, what leadership is anchored on. I will go into details, but it's anchored on empowering people, inspiring people, leading change, and shared vision. And what you notice that is really common in leadership and in all these 4 things I mentioned is that it's all about people, right? It's all about people. So that the top one is about empowering and inspiring people, and then the bottom one is about leading change for people to follow and sharing vision for people to follow as well. So it's centered around people. So I just want to start with this anchor as we then deep dive into, for me, what leadership is all about. And before we deep dive, so what I want to use to set the scene is to use my personal experience to show you what leadership is all about, because it is a journey. It's not a one-off thing. It's not okay. I want to learn. I want to lead tomorrow, and I will learn about it today. No, you get it wrong if that is what you think. It's about leadership in practice. You have to practice it. Practice makes perfect. It is a continuous process. It is about learning on the job, day to day. And therefore, I want to just give you some few snapshots of how I think I've developed over years. I'm not going to start from maybe when I was born, but I'll take a snapshot of a particular year up until now, and share some of examples of how I think I have progressed. So the first, I want to start this. Let's take the snapshot from. Okay, this shouldn't be okay. Well, it's the year I put in here shouldn't be. Um, um, so just to make sure that the context is right. So I'm going to put 97, 98, or I think just the year, so that it's uniform to what I'm going to be telling you. All right. So it is 1998. I want to start with. So for me, this is where I had an opportunity to volunteer. And in my mind, I think this is probably when my leadership journey actually started in a bigger shape, when it became visible. We have all series of leadership, either in our house or when we're in secondary school, when you're a class prefect, or all those kind of leadership. They're all leadership and they all count. Those experiences that you get when you're in primary school, secondary school, they all count. But I just wanted to start from the university level. When in my university, of course, in my second year, I think I contested for the PRO. I was the PRO, which is all about leadership as well. And then in my third year, I then went for the president to volunteer to serve and lead at the time. Then Nape wasn't in my school at the time. And as many of you or some of you will remember, NAGAMS is an arm of NMGS, just the way you have a Nape student and APG these days. So it was NAGAMS at the time, and I was the president. And for me, for that 1 year, it gave me the very first big opportunity to be able to lead a bigger community, to manage people, to take decisions, to manage people's fund, because of course, student members have to pay annual dues, and then to invest with those the annual dues in terms of putting some infrastructure in the department. I remember at the time I had to, those early days, you can imagine in the 1998, I had to buy a computer for the department at the time, and it was like a big thing, so those in the final year, including myself at the time, for our projects, we have to use those computers to typeset our project thesis. So for me, that's a journey, right? And then I just moved it a little bit, maybe about 11, 12 years after. Of course, a lot of things would have happened in between, but I just want to just take some snapshot to give you the diversity of leadership. That is not a one-off thing, and just to let you know that every experience counts. Every experience that you get on your journey counts. So while I was in Port Harcourt, of course, again, few groups in the church that I already lead, and then they've already observed me. Okay, JB, you can do this. You can do this. We saw you do this in other smaller groups. We wanted to chair our harvest committee, which was a big thing, right? For me, because again, they brought about 10 or more than 10 people. You have to manage them to now lead the whole church to be able to deliver a project, and then raise funds from nothing. So, and then implement program. And this ran for about 6 months to 8 to 9 months, really. So for me, it's also a learning process in that, even though yes, I was nominated, but it's also about volunteering in the community and the church. So for me, that counts. And you build some skill, you have some challenges, you'll be able to learn from this type of experiences. So what I'm saying this is that when this opportunity come your way, don't throw them away. And don't say it doesn't really matter, because it counts even in your workplace. Some of these examples I'm giving now is counting in my leadership, in what I'm doing today, because some of the experiences I've gathered from all this prior type of experience are some of the things I'm using today in my day-to-day leadership. And then fast forward, Okay, so this should have come in earlier though, but not a problem. This was earlier. So while I was in Landmark, sometime between 2003 and 2004. So Landmark Graphics, by the way, is Halliburton. I was also a training coordinator and instructor for anyone that was in the industry at the time to learn Landmark Graphics. So for me, this is now about formal leadership. So remember, the other one was in the school, this other one was in the church, but this one now is leadership in the office to be able to coordinate all the training in Africa at the time and be able to manage every training program that comes to our office in Lagos. For me, that gave me another dimension of leadership and how to learn on the job as well. And then you fast forward, many years after, in 2018, which is like 5 years ago. Of course, there's other things that happen in between, right? I mean, maybe I would have put in the Shell Africa network that I led at the time, which I thought was also a good opportunity to lead a network group, right? I know it's not on this slide, but let me mention it because I think this is also another important point because it's not too. That's also a bit similar to what we're doing in Nape. So when I was in the Netherlands, there is a group we call Shell Africa Network. So it's the members are people from Africa and Caribbean, and I was the chairman of that particular group. So you will see people different thinking, how people from different culture behave and think. And that way, I'm able to also learn on the journey how to manage people from different diverse world. So when those opportunities come, grab it. It also takes your time, right? You have to invest some time in this. What I'm just saying is not, and it's going to take some sacrifice as well. So it's not as if when you take this leadership journey that everything goes rosy. No. Yeah, you have to drop other things. Yeah, maybe if you have to go and play football 3 times in a week, you may have to reduce it to playing only 2 times so that you have another time to be able to, do some of this work because you have only 24 hours in a day. You can't add more. So I thought that Shell Africa Network Shell Africa Network helped gave me some insight as well in terms of diversity, and of course the deep water exploration manager, which of course many of you probably will know. Big asset to lead and manage, but again, managing people in a formal setting, right? And then you begin to learn on the job. I will come back to some of the dump on some of the key attributes that has come out of all these things. But I just wanted to give you an example that this is a journey. It's not a one-off thing. You don't want to say, let me, after 10 years of working in the industry, then on my 11th year, I want to begin to lead. No, you're getting it wrong. You're getting it wrong. In fact, actually, by the way, I've also, on a personal experience, I've also seen in my own team that I lead, I also have some people that like reports to me that lead other people. I've also seen where someone was appointed to lead straight from technical to leadership, and I'm seeing that it's not working. It's not going well. And that's why leadership is also going to be intentional. Sometimes we expect that people can move in straight from technical to begin to lead. That's a mistake that most times we do make in our companies, and I've seen examples. So, and I wouldn't want you to find yourself in that situation whereby you are appointed to lead and you become a failure. So to avoid that being a failure in the first shot, of course, you will learn from mistake, begin to pick some of these leadership attributes from school, in your MBA program, in your master's program, in your church program, in other societal volunteer program. Those will help you. I remember in I think sometime in 2002 or 2003 when I was also leading a small team, planning team in SPDC at the time. One of the human resources manager that came, I think it was the vice president or so, but for exploration, human resources came from the Hague, I believe. And when I was having one-on-one with her, she said the way I was speaking, I've been leading kinds of, and I said yes, I've been leading this in the church. I've been leading this, in my old boys association. I didn't put it even here, but at the time I was also the chairman of or I think they call it president, my alumni, my secondary school alumni in Port Harcourt at the time. So some of those attributes, and I was speaking, and she was able to, because as a HR person, she was able to pick the language. I even didn't know what I was saying, but she was able to know that there's leadership kind of stuff I've been doing, right? So those things count. Then fast forward it to what you are largely familiar with in 2020, 2021, when I became the vice president of Nape. This is also another type of leadership. right? Is slightly similar to when I was the president of Nagams, but of course, president of Nagams is a bit more, um, the students, people know you, you campaign, but they know who you are, they know who will do a good job, largely, irrespective of what you campaign. But when you go into Nape or like president of, or even at the country level politics, some people know you, some people don't know you. So you have to convince people that you can do the job, right? And that you can lead. And then when you get that position, you have to then prove and let people that you do what you say you do. And for me, that's also another type of leadership. And again, leadership where you're not paid, you're not getting anything, is volunteer. You actually spend your money to lead, you know. So for me, this NAPE VP was also another type of professional, but now contested leadership experience, which is also learning. So again, I will also, call on you to get in this space. I know that's why some of you are really in YP. And at the end of this session today, what I would really like, and it's going to be an appeal, right? You guys have to, step in and begin to take leadership role. And I've got a slide around, that I'm going to talk about around, around that topic. It's going to be a special appeal because when you look at the likes of the our senior folks in Nape, the Lai Fatoners, the Austin Avurus, the Omosholas, the Biodum, Digicone, all these leaders that we have, many of them, they started at this YP age and my age to begin to lead. And today we look up to them. But if we step back today and see where are their lives in our own time, including my time, your time, not a lot. And does it mean that we cannot do, better than they did at the time? I think we can even do better than they did, because at their time they didn't have the luxury of the things we have today in terms of the internet, in terms of the 21st century thinking, in terms of technology, how things are evolving. We are more exposed, right? Today, I mean, my children, I'm even more exposed than myself in some things. There's a lot of time I have to ask them for help. So that means we're in a better position, but I don't think we are doing enough to be able to take that leadership responsibility. So it's an appeal that you guys have to step in, and there's no loss, right? You can't really, it's not a waste, because the experience you gain, again, as you've noticed in what I'm telling you, in serving, in a situation like Nape, you will be able to use it in your workplace to grow in your career. And that's how today, most of the names I mentioned to you are CEOs of indigenous companies or MDs of indigenous companies, based on some of the things they learned. Because the question you ask yourself is why is it that it's largely people that have led in the company they work for and the Nape that are managing most of the indigenous company we have today? Just name them: Walter Smith, Chike Nwosu, right? He's been a leader in Shell, in I think Statoil or Adax, and then also in SPE, very prominent in SPE. What I mean? You talk about first EMP, Demola, right? He led in Shell and also in professional body. You saw, is it Omoshola, or is it like I mentioned before? So some of these people, they led both in the office and in the association that they serve, like Nape. So you build those two and combine all to be able to lead well in where you are today and to grow into your career. And then, of course, since last year, of course, doing the energy transition business bomb role, and then, of course, a project lead for exploration and some of the development projects that we have. Again, this is formal, a bit of stress. Sometimes you also get a stress because what I'm doing like a double job, right? So I'm leading exploration and development. I'm also doing energy transition bomb stuff. So again, this is at some time your capacity will be tested. So it's not about just leading. Just also know that at some point you have to stretch to be able to even learn more. It could be, so I'm not saying it's not going to be, well, it may be stressful, but you have to be resilient. But mark my word here, stretch. Stretch, when you stretch a pipe, it doesn't break. So my point, I'm not saying break, I'm saying stretch. So sometimes you go for that stretch. And then the question is what next? I don't know. So there's something that I've missed out here, and it was when I was preparing this slide, and when I finished typing, I was saying, "Oh my God, there's something that I didn't come here and I didn't put." And I was going to ask if anybody would can actually suggest what may have missed out in here in terms of my leadership journey, where I may have learned some things. So I've mentioned school, I've mentioned church, I've mentioned company, I've mentioned professional body. Something is missing. I don't know if anybody can get, but anyway, I can mention it because I'm going to talk back on it again um, later on. So I just have to put it here below, right? It's family. It's family. So that's the missing part, and it's not complete because don't underestimate what you learn in family leadership, right? And I know I put marriage lead in your house. You could be the first son, the first daughter. You can also be intermediate or the last daughter, last son. It doesn't really matter. The house is one of the best leadership training institutes that we have. Don't underestimate the leadership that goes on in the family. Most often, when I have succeeded is largely when I reflect back on how I manage my home as the head. My wife is there, my children are there. It's when I reflect on how, and it can be complex. Even sometimes it can be more complex than the challenges you face in your office because you've got different people behave differently, but you must make sure that that home is peaceful and delivering. So reflect on how you've succeeded in either a part of a member of your family or how you've taken some leadership in your uh, family. But some of those learning that you come and then apply it in your in your work as well. It works magic. Even when you have challenges in the workplace, think about when similar challenges may have happened in your even it could be your extended family. How was it resolved? Apply it and it's going to work. It's going to work, right? Even so even in conflict resolutions, if you know how, if you go even back to your village, if I know in my place they call it homeowner, right, which is your local kindred. If you see how they settle issues, and most times those issues, they stand. Conflict management, there is nothing different from that, right? You learn from it as well. So I just felt I needed to provide this journey experience, which is my personal experience. Let me just put some quotes just to refresh our mind, right? A bit. They'll steal your job, then you're going to fail. Just mark my word. Because sometimes people tend to, okay, I'm going to hide things. I don't want to develop others because if I develop others, they will take my job. No. In fact, in where I work, actually, if you want to aspire higher, they will need to check is there anybody available to take your job. If nobody is available to take your job, you can't even progress. So you have to develop others to move up. People develop others. So that's another very good quote, which I think is so nice. Okay, so I will go into a dump of ideas, but before then, let me go a bit more theory, a little bit. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I want to do life experience, which I've shown you. I also come back to life experience as well later, just after this slide. But outside the life experience or in my journey, there is also some theories or some definition things in the book that you need to also understand to be effective leader, and that's what I'm putting in here. There are two kinds of leadership that you can actually choose to follow. You can actually go the way of transactional leadership. You can also go the way of transformational leadership. But I think transactional leadership sometimes is a bit old. Is the old method of, you lead by is only, I show you the reward or punishment. If you do it right, I pay you this. If you don't do it right, I punish you. It's like what they say in the military, right? So it's not, I mean, in some instances, like you see in the next slide I'm going to show, you might need this type of leadership, but it's not, to be honest, we have gone beyond this type of leadership. If you want to lead by, is only when people know that they'll get reward, that they work, then it's not going to last. So it's a different mindset that we have to adopt these days, which is more of modern, which I'll come back in a second. It's also around teams obey the leaders because you are the leader and because you are the manager. You have to use your authority. Again, that's his old method, right? Because these days you have to lead the heart and the mind. But people still lead that way and succeed somehow because I mean sometimes you want to get a job done, you give instruction, but so even though I'm saying it's a bit old, but in some instances you still have to apply them, right? Because in some situations you need a bit of this. Okay, well, you take your instruction, you take your authority and make things happen. But it's not always the best, or it's not always what to use that all the time to succeed. And then of course, You begin to monitor everybody. Has okay, you come to the office, you sign. I'm sure a lot of people still do it these days. I'm telling you, and I see every day, even in Nigeria and abroad, a lot of people still, you clock in. They know the time you come in, you're signing, and everybody's keeping an eye when you go. That's okay, but yeah, I mean, yesterday, for example, I was still working till about 10 p.m. Right? It's my choice to for that year because I needed to do something. But is anybody watching me? No. And then must I be in the office by 8? No. So if I wake up the next day and come to work by 9, will you punish me because I came 1 hour late? But last night I probably gave you an extra 6 hours. So I'm not saying there should be control because there is time for everything. There is going to be structure. But my point, what I'm trying to say here is that I think all this issue of you, I'm begin to monitor you. That's not a good sign of leadership. The leadership people should be able to, you should be self-directed. In the modern world that we live in today, you should be self, and then people are more motivated to be self-directed. So just to summarize, transitional is a bit of reward and punishment, and which is not too far from what sometimes we see in Nigerian politics, but it's a bit more transactional. People do everything just to go there, take power, and then get rewarded for whatever role they play in campaign or whatever. And then if you didn't vote for them, they'll punish you. It's transactional. I don't think, and that's really, really very old. And then transformational is I think we should be more. I'm not saying we can't do transactional. Sometimes you do transactional, but in my view, from the theory and from 21st century leadership, I think it's going to be more transformational. It's going to be charismatic. It's going to be about motivating people, right? It's going to be about motivating people. It's going to be about influencing without authority. It's not only when you have authority, you have to influence people to deliver what you want. No, I should be able to talk to you, talk to your mind, and then you respect and obey what I've told you, and then you deliver it because you are motivated by what I'm telling you. I don't need to have an authority over you. That's the way I want you to move, this space I want you to move into, to be able to motivate people and influence people even without authority, and to role model, right? You don't even, when you don't have authority, people, I want to be like this guy. That person is already influencing you. You are influencing somebody because of the way you show up, the way you move, the way you do things. People begin to follow you without even you mentioning their name. And we have too many of such people in Nigeria today where we want to be like them, either musicians or whatever, that role model. That's where you need to be. And these things you have to, again, you cannot be a role model overnight. You have to build and become a role model over time and begin to see what you can do. That's, for me, transformational leadership. Without even saying a word, you're leading people. You're going to be charismatic, right? So that people can really follow you. That's the two really kinds of broader leadership style that I want to put before you. And what we are doing today is also part of being transformational, because it's also, transformational leadership is all about also social networking. So let me try to summarize a little bit around transformational, right? For me, the key message here is around motivation, right? Is around motivating people, is around influencing without authority. You should be able to influence people, and people should be able to follow you even when you don't have authority over them. And that's what is a key element of transformational leadership. And you also role model, right? So as a role model, what I was trying to say is that people can actually begin to admire and follow your leadership even when you haven't spoken to them, because they see your style of leadership. They just follow you. They don't even need to hear you, and they begin to follow your style of leadership. You can also have to be a bit charismatic. So these are some of the key 21st century type of leadership that it's advised that you should also develop, so that people can really follow you quite well. And I know I said a lot of things on this slide. To be honest, it's a pity I'll have to repeat some of them now. But my point here is that let's try to find ourselves more around transformational type of leadership. And then in some instances, you might need to be a bit more transactional and use some of those transactional type of leadership to lead. But in the modern way and where we live today, you have to really develop that attribute to lead people and motivate them, so that when they hear you, they trust and believe you and begin to do what you ask them to do. When you are not their leaders, they should be able to say, yes, you tell us, we move. So let me quickly go to some of these dumps. So these are some of the things that I've listed out yesterday when I was reflecting on my leadership journey. And I was reflecting on what has really helped me to develop and what has not really helped me to develop quite well as a good leader. And the first point I put in here is around learning from the animal world. These animals sometimes show even more effective leadership than with the human being. You see the lions, you see some animals, they when they move, the other animals follow them. And then they also defend. I mean, the example of a chicken, right? When you have a chick, all the chicks, and then you try to come around, you see how those chickens will fight you. And it's all about defending your people and your team members. Because what I noticed that sometimes as team leaders, when there's a bullet that comes in the way of your subordinates, you dodge the bullet and the bullet will hit your subordinate. That's not a good way of leadership. Sometimes you have to take full responsibility and they defend your team members because animals do it. That's the way they lead. So we should be able to lead. If you're not a speaker, I think you can go on me. There's a bit of background voice coming through. So let's tend to, learn from some of those attributes that are exhibited by some animal in the animal world. Family diversity, I already mentioned it. In the house, you have boys, you have girls, female, tall, short, old, young, diverse. So we learn from how, that diversity in the home, apply it also in our workplace. The same thing around politics, influence, and people. Also in the office, we learn also through leading people and business and military. So in the military, in some instances, they are really, really very useful. Just like in the time of the COVID-19, it's when there was a bit of an emergency, and the type of leadership that became very prominent at that time. At that time was more of command and control type of stuff because we had to adjust to COVID-19. And that in that instances, those are the time you try to deploy some of the ways that the military people lead. So you do a bit of command and like even the MS team we're using today. These are some of the adjustments we have to do because of COVID-19. So I think this is where I was still talking before Oge called my attention. So let me now start talking about things I haven't said before. Just be careful about the definition of what leadership is. It's different from management, right? Because management is about managing the day to day. You pick fire, you do budget planning, you manage processes. But it's not about that's not the same thing about leadership. You might be a good manager, but you might not be a good leader. So we need to think about because leader is about followership. You have to lead, and then people will follow you. But if you're a manager, people might not be following you, but you're just managing people, and they're not following you, right? You manage, you just manage. You today you do this work, tomorrow you do that work, but they're not really following you. Tomorrow, if you're not there, they won't do exactly the same thing you're saying. But if you're a leader, when you give instruction, this is how it has to happen. Even when you are not there, people will still do the same thing. That shows leadership. Provide clarity of, again, sometimes these are some of the areas we miss it out as leaders. You assume that your followers know what they need to do. You assume that they have that when you speak, that they understand. Sometimes that's not the case. So always make sure that there is absolute clarity in the objective and the goal that the team want to achieve. We always miss this point. Honestly, I must emphasize on this. Most times the projects don't get delivered on time because people don't really fully understand what they're supposed to be doing. Spend more time to provide clarity so that you don't leave anybody in doubt on what needs to be done and what shouldn't be done. Very important. Vision, clarity of goal, upfront. Then the other point I raised in here is around the foundation. Sometimes we think we can just become managers or leaders, but we don't have the technical foundation that we're supposed to have. Sometimes, and then sometimes people also see for promotion. If you move too quick in your career, you probably might miss the point because even when the people that you're leading even commit very minor error, you will even be able to spot it. So it's important that we spend time to develop our foundation, be good geoscientists, good petroleum engineers, set our foundation so that we really understand the basic and things we need to do. And then when you then lead, you lead with confidence because you know what you're talking about. You lead with confidence and people will trust you and then they will follow you. Know the rules as well. If you don't know, I remember I put in Nape VP as an example. So when I got into the school of Nape, one of the first thing I did was to take the Nape Constitution. I read it. I don't know how many times. I'm sure I read that Nape Constitution for more than 5 times, from beginning to the end, because I wanted to understand the rules guiding this association that I want to serve. Because that is the only way I can confidently say these are the way I want to move to make sure I stay within the bounds. And when we're in executive meeting, if body goes in the wrong way, I'm able to intervene and say, no, this will not take us in that direction. If you don't know, and most time when you come, people don't even understand the constitution. They just say things, So it's similar as well. So whether in the association or in the workplace, you need to understand the basics. And then you can begin to lead people. And then they will follow you. Get a mentor. I cannot overemphasize. I will have a bit of one slide on this one, but a mentor is always important. If you don't have one, I will really advise that you get one. And not just getting one, you also try to be mentors to other people because you need to develop other people as well. Mentoring is really, really, there's a lot of value in mentoring. And then, it could be informal in the, outside the office. It can also be somebody in your office as well. Communication skills, very important because if you're a leader and people, you cannot even communicate the goals and the vision to the people that you lead. How would they understand what you're saying? Understand your audience, know how to tweak your messaging, because sometimes when I'm talking to the young explorers or young professionals like yourself, when I'm talking to the fellows, when I'm talking to the students, it might not be the same way I have to communicate. I have to, adjust a little bit to be able to match the audience. Always think about it, because sometimes I see people when you are presenting to the senior leaders, the same way you present to junior leaders, it's not the same. So you have to, if you're senior leader, keep it at high level, keep the high notes, elevator speech. And then if they want questions, keep it simple, 1 or 2 slides. But if it's maybe junior people, you want to give details to make it clear to them. So the audience is not the same slide, but it can be messaged differently. So that's something you need to be mindful around communication, because it's really very part of key element of leadership. Also be a good listener, right? Speak less, because most times we want to speak because we like to talk. But like people will always say, our mouth is the ratio of our mouth to ear is 1 to 2. So you should listen as twice as you speak. And that's a fact. Listen as twice as much as you speak. That way you'll be able to get the pause of your people that you lead. You'll be able to engage with the people that you lead, have empathy, show care. You listen, because sometimes if you don't listen to people, you're not showing care. You just want to push down the instruction, just go and do this. Just listen to them. It comforts, it shows empathy. Just listen out to your people that you lead. And when they speak, they motivate themselves, because when you give them the audience, they feel motivated for that audience that you give them. Very important. Very important. No matter even when you're in a haste, or I remember those sometimes when I'm discussing people's issues, if you have another meeting, I would rather go late, because people's issues are something you really have to put a bit of care, because it is people that will drive the business. Earn trust of your followers. And the why I'm saying this is that I'm asking every one of you on this call, if you're a leader, when they say you stand up, let's say Bethel, you stand, and then Flora, you stand, and then they say, okay, who do you want to follow? People should line up behind, two of you. The question is, who should people line up behind? Should it be split equally, or should everybody line up on Mr. A and then not on Mr. B? Think about it. Because people might be pretending when you're leading, they think they are with you, but think about when they're at your back. So, and that is why trust is really important. So if you earn their trust, then they should just stand behind you, even when you're not there. Integrity is also very important around ethics. So, don't say A, you do B. So be consistent in what you say. Delegate, very powerful. Very powerful. You cannot, if you want to do everything by yourself, you kill yourself. So you have to delegate. And that's also about that first slide that I mentioned before around empowerment. When you empower people, you delegate people, they feel empowered, they feel motivated, they will do everything for you. But there is also the other element I put in there, which is also a bit of learning for me as well. And I want that to sink into your ear. Trust, but verify. Because when you delegate, when you empower people, you mean that you are trusting them to do the work. And you don't want to micromanage, right? I hate micromanaging. I don't, if it's not even in my dictionary, I hate it with every element of hate. Whether to micromanage people or to micromanage, I don't like it. But sometimes I get people micromanage me. Not a problem. But when I delegate, when I don't micromanage, the question here is how much do you want to trust them? You can't trust people by but can still verify. There's nothing wrong with verifying. but at least you trust them. So that's something I just wanted to emphasize. They're not exactly the same, So so don't we have to delegate, but a bit trust but verify. Seek feedback. So that's how we develop. You don't know it all, and seek feedback across board. The managers above you, your subordinates, your peers, so that you can improve. And seeking feedback does not mean you have to do everything that you hear. People can give you feedback on 10 items. You can pick only 5, pick only 6, pick only 1, pick only 9. It's your choice. But give people a chance to see you and tell you what and how they feel about you. It's about perception. Perception is also, can also matter in some instances. Have a learner mindset. The only thing I want to say on this learner mindset is that also learn from bad bosses. Don't only learn the good things that they do. If there are bad things that leaders do you don't like, learn it. And the reason why you want to learn it is that so that you don't do it. Because if you don't know that, if you don't see it and see that it's a bad leadership, then you might commit the same crime. So you see, whatever people you learn from senior leaders, look at what the good and the bad they do, so that you only do the good and then drop the bad because you know that they are bad. Then find the strength in your team, use it. If you don't understand the strength of your team, then you struggle to know who to use at what point in time. So it's really very important. That's why I said it's good to listen so that you can really understand your team and really know how to manage them and use the strength. And then where there's weakness, you know how to cover it up as a leader. So lastly, I would say motivate your team and be intentional about it. So leadership is going to be about intentional leadership as well. So what I would do now, so these are some of the dumps and some, some tips of what I think that's helped me to be an effective leader. And I think you should think, and consider some of these things. You must not use all of them, but if you use all of them, I think that would really help your leadership journey in the 21st century. So let me quickly, I think this should be my last slide. Yes, this is the last slide. So I just wanted to end on this. So this is around mentoring, right? As Flora mentioned at the beginning, I initiated the mentoring circles. And why did I initiate the mentoring circles? This is the main reason why I did it. Just these 6 bullet points. Because I also felt that we in the Nape need to keep an eye on emerging leaders. And the emerging leaders are you guys on this call. 24 of you that are listening. You are the emerging leaders. And this leadership series we're having, it should be one of them. Mentoring circle should be one of them. We need to be able to develop emerging leaders to be able to take over, like I mentioned at the beginning. It will be unfair and injustice if the young leaders are not developed when other people have developed us. So mentoring circle, in my mind, is one of the ways to do this. And I will really ask you, I'm not sure how it's going about that. I know in the future, mentoring circle is going to continue. Take advantage of it if you haven't. Even if you have done it before, continue to do it. If it's not working, make some suggestions, but also volunteer to be a mentor yourself. You can also mentor the younger ones that are coming up as well. It is a way to make that continuity to happen. In the time of change, that's also why the business circle was established to manage, in time of change, like during the COVID-19, now we're in the energy transition. We need this type of mentoring circles to be able to develop leaders and have a discussion on how we can manage this change that is before us. When you discuss, you find solution. Entrepreneurship mindset, which comes with risk, right? Entrepreneurship is also about taking risk. That's also what mentoring circles offers you, to be able to have and develop that mindset of entrepreneurship, and then help you to navigate through your early to mid career, which is exactly what we're trying to do now as well. It is a value for Nape members. It's also a value I want you to transfer to other people, because it's done for free. People volunteer to mentor, right? And therefore it should be one of the value that members should get. And then with that opportunity, we can also network and begin to develop our career journey as we practice. So this is where I will leave it, and then pause now to take some comments or questions and answers.
All right, thank you very, very much for this great presentation. So if you have any question, just use the raise hand emoji, and then we can call it on mute. Thank you.
I see Okechukwu hand is up. We can go.
Okay. Hello, and good afternoon, sir. It was a wonderful session, and it's something I really enjoyed.
All right, Prince, you
But
can ask your question.
yes, we wanted to
Can you
know.
unmute and ask your question, Prince Will?
I'm unmuted already. Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. Go ahead, okay. Yes, go. I can.
Yeah. Yes. So I wanted to ask, do you think it is everyone who can become a leader? Because I have literally gone backwards.
Okay, that is that the
Hello,
question? Yeah, I can hear
can you
you.
hear me, sir?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. I can hear you.
I said I have literally gone through your history, especially what you told here, and did some of my own digging, and I found that it seems like you are natural. So for people who think they are not natural, do you think it's everyone that can be a leader in their own right? Thank you.
Okay. No, no. Many thanks, Okechukwu. My answer to you is yes. Everybody can be a leader, but it doesn't mean, and you can also be a leader in your technical space, right? You may not be leading people. It's not everybody that may have that appetite to lead people. There are some people that don't want to lead people, but they can also be leaders in their own small unique way in the work that they do. Now, let me take you back to again what you made reference to my profile. It might tend to be that some people are natural leaders, and by the way, there is what they call in the leadership theory they call trait theory, and that trait theory says, and that's what we used to do in the olden days. When a king, for example, in my village, it used to happen until about a few years ago. When, and in fact, actually, by the way, it still happens in the UK. Most of you saw when the King Charles took over. That's exactly example of what I wanted to say. It seems as if that that kingship family is they are born to rule. After Queen Elizabeth, now is going to be Charles. After Charles, is going to be Prince Williams, and then George, and then that other, right? But the way I will explain it is that it doesn't necessarily. It might look like, okay, it's natural. They are naturally born to rule, but it is not exactly the case. That's my view. I think what is happening is that they were also learning in the journey. You know, Charles was learning from Elizabeth. I'm sure now Williams is going to be learning from Charles, and George will learn from William, and they learn. So it's not as if leadership you can learn it. That's my point. You can learn leadership. So even if don't feel that you are not naturally a leader. No, if you've got that mindset that you can learn, the same way you learn you learn what is geology. You learn what is a reservoir and what is a seal. It's the same way. If you learn from people and then study people, then if you approach the same methodology, you're going to succeed. So my point is that anybody that wants to be a leader can be. You don't need to be naturally born to be a leader. No, you can learn. But of course, it can then be a choice that you don't want to lead people. That becomes a personal choice that I don't want to lead people. That is different. It can be a choice. But if you have the choice to lead, you can if you learn, will be my answer. I hope that helps, Okejulu. Okay.
Prince, does that answer your question? Okay, so moving on. So if you have any question, unmute yourself and ask Mr. John Bosco. All right, Destiny, you can go unmute and ask.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. So confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you very well, Destiny.
Yeah. So in the course of your journey, I don't know if perhaps you have handled some challenges with people who are in your team and they seem to do their own things differently and they don't want to listen to what other people have to bring to the table, or they just bring their own thing at their own time and give their own direction or decision or what they think about it, and they don't care to look at other opinion or view about it. How have you been able to manage such people and try to bring them to understand how they can work with you as a team? Because to you, it seems like it's not being part, or the person not being part of the team, and you actually need to look for a way to integrate this person in so that the work doesn't end up to be a failure. Because if one person fails, everyone fails. So have you been able to manage such a situation, sir?
No, thanks, Destiny. I have found exactly what you described. I've seen that happen in my team. In fact, actually, one very, 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 very recently. But I must be very honest with you. it's not easy. It's not easy to manage. And that's what I mentioned around conflict management as well. It's not that easy. Sometimes you see some team members going their way, and most times with the right intention as well, because they want to do something as well, but in a different way that is out of sync with the way the team wants to go about it. I've usually deployed, and that's also what I did in this instance, is again, one-on-one discussion usually helps, right? Because, and this is where the command and control does not work. And that's why I mentioned transitional leadership is okay in some instances, but some instances, if you apply command and control in this, it may backfire because the person will just maybe even answer you and then even do more, worse things. So I think it's going to be a heart and mind. And that's in this instance when I have had this similar situation that you painted, which is real. I've had to call the individual in question on a one-on-one. And when you're doing this, always have your evidence, right? Because if you don't have evidence, it's going to be difficult to convince the individual to show that this is what I observe, this is the consequence. Show that evidence. At least the person will trust you to end trust so that it's not like you're talking in the air, you're just talking on hearsay. Just observe and take evidence and bring it on the table and say, this is it. And this discussion is all about continuous improvement and how we can make things better. Then you hear the person out. Because sometimes what we tend to forget, Destiny, is that the person may be doing something for a reason. So if you don't hear the person out to understand why the person is doing that thing, then you make an assumption and make a decision that might not work. And that's where that attribute of having a listening ear will count. Just listen and find out why the person is doing it. And when you have that one-on-one conversation, you can already see sometimes in this instance that I had this situation, the person told me, okay, don't worry, JB, I'm going to improve on this. Your feedback well taken. But of course, when that happens, most times there's conflict between the team members. It doesn't go easily out. So for me, the also another example I have that has happened in my team, which has worked, but this one I want to tell you now may not happen all the time. I've had two individuals who come into a team meeting, and then the two individuals, accuse themselves and they raise their voice, right? They raise their voice before other team members, and this person accused this person. So after that meeting, I said, okay, no, you know what? I stopped it. No, let's end that conversation at that point. After the meeting, I have to call two of them. So because it's also important to call two of them, but most times my approach will be to do one-on-one first before you bring people together. But in this particular instance, I have to go straight because they were senior leaders as well, mature people. I called two of them. I said, you know what? I hear them out. You say what is your concern. You say what is your concern. And then immediately I had everything. I gave my feedback, but I told them from what I hear that it's better for two of them to go and iron it out themselves. I don't need to be involved. I said, you guys, two of you go and iron it out them yourself. And two of them went, discussed it themselves, and they said it themselves. And to be honest, they started working perfectly so well. So for me, in this instance, this one really worked perfectly well. But in the other instance that I gave you, where there's one that hasn't really fully worked well between the two individuals that which is another example. I've tried to do one-on-one, and yes, there is an improvement, and everybody's working towards the same goal. But sometimes you see a bit of, maybe these two people are not yet, gel. But you cannot, if two people don't want to gel, you can't force it. But all you need to do as a leader is to ensure that if people don't gel, that should not impact the team, because the team delivery is a key element. So, but just to summarize again, a Destiny, having one-on-one and a listening ear to understand why the person is doing what he's doing and be able to have evidence and then recommend solution usually is the approach that I typically use. I hope that helps, Destiny.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate. Thank
Okay.
you, sir.
Thank you. Shane.
Okay, Mute, you can ask your question.
Thank you very much, JB, for this presentation. And about becoming a leader must have this learner mindset and growth mindset. So, in over 2 decades of your experience, what would you say is the greatest leadership advice you've received?
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. So the best advice I will give, from what I have noticed, and everybody might not use my style, but I tend to use. I don't think I mentioned it today, but what they call relational leadership. Relational, and for me, relational is about um, Because one thing I realized in this world is that you don't have anybody that is an evil. You don't have a devil living in this. It's people that allow evil stuff to come to your mind. So that means in the mind of everybody, there is something, a good space in that person's mind. And if you're able to attack that mind and end the trust of that mind, you get everything that you need. That's what I've always done in my, and that's been my, maybe not, let me not say that's what I've always done, but that's what I've learned that has really worked for me. And it's largely around relational leadership. So that it's not, when you have that personal touch, it's usually, so I give you an example. you know, um, so what you notice is that, and I think Flora is also doing it. When somebody raises a hand here, I call your name, right? She now called you, she called your name, um, before you ask your question. You know, um, that's Okemuta, if I'm correct. Okemuta. And then when Disney asks a question, I also call the name. People, if you value, it shows that I care about who you are. And that's why I call it, because sometimes people don't even, you say, okay, I'm not good at knowing people's name. That's who says that you're not good at knowing people's name in your team and even where you work. So that personal touch for me is always what is important, because why I'm saying that is important is that it's people that will deliver business for you. It's people first. If you put business first before people, that's when you get it wrong. So for me, is that people relations, I try to lead by relationship, and that has really helped me. Even when I was in the when I was managing a portfolio in the depot in Snapeco, most of the successes I recorded in terms of either getting a partner support, be it in the regulatory approval or be it in the other gym partners, is largely around relationship. To be honest, is that one to one, because if you want to do command and control, okay, this is the rule, this is how we do it. Then the person can say, okay, well, okay, thank you, and then walk away. But if you're able to, bring in a bit of relationship to say, okay, why, this is important that we do, this is why we have to do this, and this is also going to help me and help you and help the business, just that one-on-one touch and respect, because for me, that's also another way to put it, is about respect. It's about respect. When you give people respect, they will deliver for you. It could be as simple as, there's an example I usually give in my office. I don't need to give details here. We wanted to have a meeting with another partner, and I have to travel. Then I was in Port Harcourt. I have to fly away from Port Harcourt to Lagos to go and discuss the agenda of the meeting. It's something as simple as agenda. Agenda takes only about 5 minutes, right? But I have to fly in. I told my boss at the time, that I want to go and discuss the agenda of the meeting with this individual that was going to come for this meeting. They paid the flight. I went, sat down to the office, and we went through the agenda one by one. Out of the agenda we had, maybe let's say 10 items, for example. Maybe it's only about 2 or 3 that we tweaked. The other ones was good. But when we went into that meeting, you could see the value of that engagement, that personal touch I had with the person. It changed the whole narrative. So that for me is the biggest advice I would give, to find a way, no matter what, no matter your personality, because people have different kind of personalities. No matter your personality, always remember that it's the people first before the business. And if you have that personal connect and touch with people, they will always believe you, they will follow you, and they will trust and follow you. So that's be my advice. Okay, Mute. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does, sir. People first before the business. Thanks.
Correct. Thank you.
All
I
right,
see
thank
some.
you very much. If there are no other question, okay, I think Show wants to stay home. So Show asked a question. He said, what is the thin line difference between, just hold on,
Okay. Yeah, I see it.
okay, between leadership and management?
Uh,
Then how
okay.
do you do with working in a toxic environment? Say with it, sorry.
Yeah. No, very, very, very. Again, thanks, Shem. These are very valid questions, and these are real. These are real situations. I've also have had to be in this situation of number two that you mentioned. I've had to be in this situation, um, maybe once, or I don't know if it's more than once now. I think back, um, maybe up to 2 times. I've been in this situation maybe one or two. Maybe at least I know of at least one in my career. In my 22 years career experience, I've been in this situation at least once, but maybe up to 2 times. checking what they're doing, and you're basically running day-to-day affairs of your work. It's not as if that you cannot be only leaders and not manage, because you have to still manage the whole process. But management is largely around day-to-day type of activity. That's what it's all about. It's the day-to-day. So you come in, okay, have you done this? Tomorrow you have to do this. You give instruction. You monitor. Okay, tomorrow, the next day, how did we spend the 100 naira? So budget and planning. Those for me, those are really what managers do. And we all do that. I'm a manager. I mean, I also do that because that's part of my responsibility. But in addition to manager, that's where leader. So leadership is about change, right? Because managers, turn out. So every day, this is what we do. Tomorrow, this is what we do. No change. You just continue to do the same thing, and you continue to give. Is a company that is making $100 profit. But if you set the right vision and make change, your profit will move from 100. The different reward that come with how you manage or how you lead. So manager is not bad, because that's we must manage our businesses and everything we do. You have to, but bring in the element of leadership, because leaders initiate change. Leaders show a vision where you want to get to. Leaders are more strategic, if I may use the word. They're more strategic. You're looking at the whole strategic picture. How are things going? How is the dynamics of everything? Because manager will not care about the empathy, just just do things and keep getting the result. But it's about understanding the people that you're leading and providing the right atmosphere, which comes back to the second point that you raised, because that toxic environment is usually provided by bosses that are just managers, they're not leaders. Because if you're a leader, you have to think about creating a right atmosphere. Because when you create the right atmosphere, you don't need to be there. Things will begin to work. People will begin to just do the things, even when you're not there. And if they're confused, they call you for to clarify things. You know. So that's the way I will explain the thin line between management and leadership. So management, of course, we have to manage. Of course, we have to keep our books and do all those stuff. But it's not enough. You have to bring in a bit of element of that strategic direction, vision, strategy. And change. Those are the key words that you see in leadership that you don't see in management. And the micromanaging is also micromanaging is about leadership. But when you delegate is also around leadership, because managers don't delegate. They manage, they do everything. Managers don't delegate. You come in, you do the work, you go. That's delegate and give direction, and then the person will run. That's for me the key difference between the two. Then on the second point, well, some of you might have seen the sticker in some offices that they say the boss is always right, and that is correct. That's something you need to understand. The boss is always right because he's the boss, whether it's a toxic boss or non-toxic boss. So all you need to do is, and my advice will always be, I don't know, it depends on the company you work, but I know where I work, there is nothing that is permanent, honestly. So the manager will move, or you yourself will move. Out of reaction to a toxic manager, this happened. I mean, when I was in Landmark, I know two people that resigned with annoyance because of the boss they had at the time, and without even having any job out there. They just, this guy can't manage me. Instead of managing me, I will leave, and they will leave. And then nothing happens. So who is then losing? So it's so I'm not saying that if the manager that is toxic is going to impact your mental health, your life and everything, please run away. Don't even stay there, because your health and your life is more important. But if it's something that you can manage, then it's temporal. It's something that's going to happen. So I just want to give this example before saying how I manage it. But in terms of how I manage it, it's largely around trying to understand again your manager from where it's coming from, because most times is in engagement. You just seek to engage, because even when your manager don't engage you, engage your manager to find out where he's coming or she's coming from, because sometimes he may not or she may not even understand what he's trying to do by creating that toxic environment. So, and then you also give feedback as well, because sometimes they don't know. So, and when you do all those things and it doesn't work, then you find a way to manage it. And in some instances, you might have to, seek advice from a senior leader for that's also where mentoring comes in. If you get a mentor in that same organization where the boss is, that's also very helpful. So that the mentor can also, who is at about the same level with that toxic manager, be able to guide you better on how to manage that manager. Because change is meant to happen. Either you move or your manager moves at some point. You know. So that's what, but it's not an easy thing, Shane. I must tell you, I've been in that situation. It's not an easy. It's time consuming because you don't feel like going to work because when you go, it's all about yeah, you don't feel good. So that's the way I will answer that bit, Shane. I hope that helped before I go to Uche's question. Okay, maybe because you typed, maybe because you were unable to speak. Um, so I don't know, Flora. Can I go to the next one?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
But I think she has a follow-up question. We'll take the last one with Femi Bello.
Okay, that's the Shemu's last one. Okay, as follow up. Okay, how do you cope in a space where your ideas are not always welcomed by your team lead and where you do not find yourself growing? So it's creativity. Okay, so I'll give you an example. But this is a good example, but it's not everybody they will do it. But I'll tell you, this is what I did. So there was a project that we had in my team, and they were one, two, three. There were three of them working on the project. So someone was leading the team, two other younger folks. So I had somebody. They all report to me, but one of them was leading the project. And one of the younger folks that was doing that project, the software that he used to interpret the faults, map the horizon. So we're trying to prove that the fault is continuous. So there's a fault that was being mapped, and there was an argument in the team whether that fault is continuous or not. And the guy used all kinds of attributes, some of the tools, advanced tools that we have, and was able to demonstrate that fault continued. And he made a video of that fault. That video lasted for 10 minutes. So when he was doing that mapping, he was talking, describing the fault, doing everything. It lasted for 10 minutes. And then we were having a review. And then in the course of that review with some of people that are sure our work, that younger staff wanted to play that video to demonstrate that stuff. The guy that was leading that team didn't want him to show that video, and he was telling me, "No, I don't. This is going to waste our time." I said, "No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that because the review session we had was our 3 hours review session with the people that are going to share our work. 10 minutes is not going to kill us. If you deny that guy that 10 minutes, you demotivate that guy for the next 6 months to 1 year. For the next 6 to 1 year, that 10 minutes that you deny that guy, it will cost you more harm. Allow this guy to show the 10 minutes video. Whether it's, strategically, it may add value, it may not add, but allow him to show because he has spent a lot of time and energy for that creativity to bring in that idea on how to, for the good intention of the team. He wasn't doing it to punish the team. He was doing it for the team to benefit. It was for the right intention. You can give him a feedback later on one-on-one to say, this video you gave, by the way, is only about 2 minutes that is useful. That 8 minutes is useless. Can you adjust this video and then do it differently? But that's one-on-one. But in that plenary, right, you have to accept that idea. So I'm just trying to give you a good example of how you manage this. That we need to sometimes create atmosphere for people to bring idea. Because if people don't bring idea, in fact, actually, that's what we call ideation. For people to bring an idea. So if people bring an idea about 10, if 2 out of the 10 idea can make a big difference. But if you don't even have an opportunity for people to bring in idea, to even have that 10, you will not. So ideas is not good to destroy them. So that is, I'm saying the good part. But now to come to what you're saying, sometimes some leaders don't. Some leaders don't. And if you bring in if it's not always welcome, it's going to demoralize. But don't stop. It would be my suggestion. Don't stop because if you also check some of the inventors, people that have succeeded, somebody like the Apple guy, Steve Jobs, um, all these people that inventors, right? It's not all the time that the idea fly, right? They try, they suppress them. If you hear the stories of everybody, in fact, I think I was also listening to Tiwa Savage. She was giving her story about how she tried something, and then before it worked. So people have all those kind of stories. So if you are not persistent, and because so that you also don't, so why I'm saying don't stop is because even if that idea is not taken on board, as long as the idea is not bringing negativity to yourself, it's only when the idea is bringing negativity to yourself that you can, maybe stop and then do something else. But if that idea is not, then continue to bring it because one day it's going to be accepted, or even if it's not accepted, so that you don't destroy your creativity. Because if you stop, then you stop creating things, and you need to have a creative mindset, which even if it's not useful for you, then let me then go to the second point I want to make, which is around where you don't find yourself growing. So let me now link it to that follow-up question. You can then quit and go elsewhere. You must not. Nobody says you must stay in that same company, right? If things are not working, then look elsewhere and then leave. That's why people leave. There's nothing wrong in quit. Leaving. People, after all, people that are managing you left somewhere else to start managing you or own a company. So people move around. So you quit. If things are not working, look for elsewhere. Nobody says you must work for company A. So if you think you're not growing and the company is not helping you to grow, then it is time to move. It is time to move. So but why I want to link it to the other first point I was trying to describe is that don't kill your creativity, because if this company A is not valuing your creativity, tomorrow you may move to another team in the same company that will value your creativity. So that will now be used. Or tomorrow you might move to another company that will value it. So, but if you have now stopped your creativity, when you then move, then you lose. You are the one that is losing. So my advice would be not to stop, but of course find a way to. Maybe you also have to look at yourself in the mirror. The way I am presenting this idea, am I presenting it the right way? Can I adjust and take feedback? Because that's something that's what we don't do often. So you can take a feedback from either your team leader or your colleagues. How can you do it differently? So sometimes it's always good to accuse, but sometimes reflecting and look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, what can I do differently? And then seek out a feedback. Why it's not being accepted? Because there may be a reason why it's also not being accepted, which is a blind spot to you. So be that open. But when you've tried all this, you seek the feedback, you've tried a couple of times. My advice will be don't stop, right? Don't stop, because so they don't kill your creativity. If they don't value it Mr. B will value it. The cornerstone, the rejected cornerstone can be or the rejected stone can be the cornerstone elsewhere. So that's be my advice, Sean, for that follow-up question.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me now.
No, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Yes.
Thank you so much. I think I had an issue with my device.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Mr. J.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. So the Flora, there's other questions above. How do we solve a problem about misconception as a leader? Thank you for the discipline. How do we solve a problem about misconception? So this is where feedback also works. Remember those slides I shared, right? I mean, maybe let me just put it on as I'm talking. So this is where feedback comes in. If I'm asking a question about, if you are a leader and then there's a bit of misconception, and it happens, right? But it's only when you are given a chance that you'll be able to correct that impression. And this is why engagement is important. Engaging people. And it's only when you engage you have a chance to clarify. And that also goes back to the point I talked about, providing clarity. Because a lot of people make assumptions, and when they make assumptions, then they misconceive you that, okay, you're not doing well, or you're doing this, you're not doing that, right? So seeking audience to be able to clarify, for me, is what I would say. And engagement is all part of the whole business, because I said, if people that will drive business, so people need to have the same message, single truth. There should not be two versions of truth, only single truth that everybody needs to have. And that's why that clarity of objective is really important. So my advice, Bello, will be, create an opportunity to clarify create an opportunity to also seek feedback so that you really know why people are having that misconception. There are all kinds of surveys, 360 feedback, degree feedback. There's all kinds of feedback, anonymous mentee, anonymous feedback. Because sometimes if you don't get insight into why people are doing or saying what they're saying, you don't know what to do. You just be solving, curing the sickness with the wrong drug. So my two advice here would be create a room for feedback, and it can be anonymous, like mentee or 360 feedback, anonymous, so that you also understand where people are coming from and then address it head on. And then the second thing is to create a room, an opportunity or an environment to clarify, so that everybody gets, understand where you're coming from. Because sometimes communication is not easy, and sometimes some of these things are better, face to face or over talking over it. Because sometimes when you write a mail, if you write me a mail now, most often I really misinterpret the mail. I've seen a mail that I didn't read it quite well, and I started doing something that costed me a lot of money. So misconception is bound to happen. But if you have a chance to clarify it, then I think that's the way. So those are the two approach I will use there, Bello.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. JB, for this wonderful section. I guess we've learned a lot. I want to say thank you for sharing your wealth of experience and leadership insight to the young professionals in oil and gas industry.
So
I
Flora,
would say
before you
very, very big thank you.
yeah, so Flora, so
Okay.
very quick apologies. There's something that Uche put on the chat board, which I think is very important because I didn't talk about it a lot of most often. There is an issue
Okay.
where around bonding, team bonding. That's also I didn't talk about it today, but that's really, really, really critical as well, right? In those social events, because that will even is in those social events that sometimes you figure out why people have misconceptions. So it also goes back to the last question I provided, right? When you're at that gathering, that's when people will be able to also, when you are having a drink and dinner or whatever, that's when people might also, in that informal way, open up and tell you things. In the formal way, they won't tell you. And I've experienced it quite a lot. Most often when I hang out with my team members, and I do it quite often, I hang out with my team members. Very important point you raised, Uche. It helps because it's in that informal environment that people will be able to open up and tell you some things that ordinarily they won't tell you in a formal way. I've benefited immensely. So thanks for putting that point, and I fully agree with you, Uche. Yeah, back to you, Flora.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. John Bosco. So on behalf of the YP community and the executive, I want to say a very big thank you for this wonderful presentation. I guess we've all learned a lot, and we are going to implement it in our leadership journey in our career growth in the oil and gas industry. So thank you. And to everyone that joined the meeting, thank you very much for making our time to join this meeting, and to have a lovely weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.